In this worksheet called Index Match, we're going to show you how you sometimes need to use match and index together to come up with answers. We could imagine this table on a different worksheet, maybe even a different workbook. What we'd like to be able to do here is type in any month here or any product here based on the ones that are available, and then come up with an answer as to how many of those items were sold for that particular combination of a month and a particular item. We can begin by focusing, first of all, on the month. In the example here, we've got March set up as the month, CD drives as the item in question. And you can see both of those respectively in column E and in row 1. So we can build this slowly or possibly come together ultimately in a single formula using match and index. First of all, let's figure out which month is going to be appropriate here. We want to use this later to come up with the appropriate row number. So there's March there, and of course it could be any of the 11 other months. We'll use the match function here to match whatever that entry is, in this case it's March, comma, with the entries that we see here. And let's say that we also might want to use total from time to time, so we'll include it as well too. So actually 13 possible entries, comma, and we want that to be an exact match. So what will we learn from this? The relative location of March within the list. And of course, that should be 3 once we put our 0 in place here and press enter. So it's 3. Now, with products, we want to be looking across the top here. And here, too, we want to be using the match function. This time, we're gathering the data from cell B2, right there, comma. And the range that contains the different entries of that type are from F1 over to J1. And here, too, we're looking for an exact match. 0 and enter. So that's in the second column. So what we've identified here are 2 numbers that we're ready to now use in the index function. Remember, index allows us to pull data out of a table. So we've got a table consisting of data here, all these yellow cells, comma. And if we want to pull data out of the third row, that's our month offset right here, we'll use this cell reference, comma, and the appropriate column, which is the second column out of that list, comes from right here. Looking ahead here before we actually see the answer, if we were looking at March CD drives, then we should be expecting to see the number 3358 as we press enter. And we do. It's right there. Now, as I press Control tilde here to display all worksheet formulas, recognize that we could have built as a single formula an index function that pulls together the 2 different matches. Let me press Control tilde again. So we can set that up relatively easily here simply by taking this data here in the sales entry, copying all this except for the equal. So highlight this, press Control C, escape, go into cell B8, and for the moment here we'll type equal, Control V to paste that in. For the moment we haven't done anything additional, but now we want to plug in the entries from B4 and B5. So we'll first press enter, go back to cell B4, pick up this data right here, not the equal sign, but everything else. Highlight this, press Control C and escape, come back to our formula in B8 and put it in right here in place of B4. Highlight this, press Control V. So the function is definitely going to be longer, and it isn't always necessarily better to have a function like this put together into a single formula, but seeing it like this sometimes has merit as well. We haven't taken care of the B5 yet, so let's go to cell B5, double-click, and highlight that data right there. Press Control C to copy and escape, then come to our single formula entry in B8, and now plug in the B5 entry right here, based on what we had just copied there. So now a Control V to paste. So this pulls together the 2 uses of match along with index to come up with the answer there. So a little bit involved, and I'm not necessarily saying a single formula answer is the best way to do this. Maybe building it in pieces is going to work better. Now you could enhance this even further by providing drop-down lists in cell B1 and B2. And you can do that by way of data validation. And in a later movie in this course, you'll see how to do that. That's probably a bit much for the example here. And do imagine these situations possibly where the table information is on a different worksheet. But there's no question that sometimes using the index and the match functions together will make sense. Another example could be out here in columns M and N, where we've got, for example, in column P, the social security number, and we're trying to look up the name. Now, right away, a lot of us would say, well, why don't we just move the name to the left of the social security column? You certainly could do that in a lot of cases, but what if what we're looking up is in one location? This is in a different worksheet, and there are a lot of formulas working off of it already, and you just don't have the luxury of changing the layout. How could we find someone's name here? We begin by using the match function to find the relative location of that social security number. For the moment, we're looking at this value, comma, in column M, and we're looking for an exact match, comma 0. We press enter. It tells us it's in the 7th position. Now that's going to be handy when we use the index function, because when we're using index, let's say we're only looking at column N, comma, and we're trying to get data out of which row? The row that we just got out of here, row 7. Click it there. Now, if the index function is looking at a table that's only in a single column, we don't need to provide a column reference. It's automatic. Who is associated with that social security number, that 560? It's going to be Quinn Collins, and there it is. So here we're using index and the result of a match, and here too, it might be appropriate. Go back to the use of match right here, copy this data, Control-C and escape, plug it into the index, and in the example here, we'll use it for Q2, Control-V to paste. So this function by itself, the index that's looking up data in column N, based on our example of getting the row number by way of the match function, gives us the answer we want. So ultimately, we wouldn't need this anymore. We've simply got this here. So we can look up, in effect, it's like using a VLOOKUP, but looking leftward in the example. And it's for those cases where we don't have the luxury or the possibility or maybe the time to restructure the source data. But using match and index together, quite common occurrence as we work with Excel functions.